Hello, readers and writers, and welcome to Lesson 15 of your ELA School Away from School. I am Mr. Driver, and I will be your virtual teacher for today's daily lesson. Let's start with some guiding questions. What journey does food take before it gets to your plate? How do we make decisions about what we eat? Remember that we'll continue addressing these questions today, throughout the week, and throughout the weeks to come as we continue to examine the topic at hand. All right, time to get some materials for today's lesson. You're going to need a copy of the text, group list the cleanest and dirtiest fruits and veggies, your copy of lesson number 15, the lesson number 15 note catcher, as well as a pencil. Go ahead and pause the video here and make sure you have everything needed for today. We have two learning targets for today's work. I can determine the central idea of an informational text, and I can cite text-based evidence that provides the strongest support for my analysis of a text. Remember, the central message is a big idea that the author wants you to understand and take away after reading a text. Let's make sure we keep these learning targets in mind during all of our work today. First, we will do a close read on our article, Group Lists the Cleanest and Dirtiest Fruits and Veggies. As I read aloud the article, please follow along with your eyes on the words that are being spoken. Take a moment to get your article out. It is important to hear the article read in its entirety before we start to examine section by section. Feel free to pause the video or replay it as needed. Again, we're trying to think about what the central message that the author wants us to take away. Group list the cleanest and the dirtiest fruits and veggies. Image 1. Environmental Working Group, EWG, released its Dirty Dozen, a list of fruits and vegetables with the most pesticide residue. We should be careful about the leafy greens we buy, an environmental group says. Some of them, spinach and kale specifically, can reportedly have a bad side. Spinach and kale are ranked second and third respectively on Environmental Working Group, or EWG's, Dirty Dozen. It's a list of the fruits and vegetables with the most residue, or leftover bits, of pesticide. Farmers use pesticides, which are chemicals meant to keep bugs and other pests from eating their crops. Pesticides also keep weeds from overtaking crops. The use of pesticides in food production is widespread. As a result, people are exposed to low levels of pesticide residue through their diets. Scientists do not fully know the health effects of pesticide residues. Top of the Dirty Dozen. EWG released new lists on March 20th. At the top of the group's latest Dirty Dozen list is strawberries. After spinach and kale, nectarines and apples round out the top 5. The group found that more than 90% of samples of strawberries, apples, cherries, spinach, nectarines, and kale tested positive for residues from 2 or more pesticides. Meanwhile, multiple samples of kale indicated the presence of 18 pesticides. Nearly 70% of the produce sold in the U.S. comes with pesticide residues, the EWG said in its 2019 Shopper's Guide to Pesticides and Produce. It analyzes U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA, test data. The USDA is the part of the federal government that deals with policies affecting farms, forests, and food. EWG advises people to eat organic produce. Fruits and vegetables that are organic are not necessarily free of pesticides or chemicals. However, any pesticides that are used must come from natural sources. They cannot be synthetically produced. 7% of fruit and 11% of vegetables sold in the US in 2018 were organic, according to the consumer data company Nielsen. Nielsen also found that 15% of frozen fruit and 5% of vegetables sold were organic. The EWG explained that the guide was made to help consumers reduce their pesticide exposures as much as possible. They did this by reporting what fruits and veggies to buy organic and which traditional non-organic produce have low levels of pesticide residue. The group pointed to research showing possible connections between agricultural pesticides and diseases, including cancer. EWG isn't issuing a free pass for veggie haters, though. The Clean 15 rankings. The activist organization also has a Clean 15 ranking. This list highlights produce with the least pesticide residue. The top 5 are avocados, sweet corn, pineapples, frozen sweet peas, and onions. Less than 1% of avocados and sweet corn samples had detectable pesticides. More than 70% of Clean 15 samples had none. The federal government's role in protecting our health, farm workers, and the environment from harmful pesticides is in urgent need of reform, the EWG said. In December, the U.S. Department of Agriculture released its 2017 pesticide data. It's called "The U.S. is Food Supply Among the Safest in the World," and said more than 99% of the samples tested had pesticide residues well below benchmark levels established by the Environmental Protection Agency. The data was from tests on fresh and processed foods. This included fruits, vegetables, honey, milk, and bottled water. Teresa Thorne is a spokeswoman for the Alliance for Food and Farming. The Watsonville, California-based organization represents organic and non-organic produce farmers. She said EWG has been reporting on this for more than 2 decades, and it's time to move away from it. She called the amount of pesticide residue on conventionally grown and organic produce so low. Thorne cited scientific research. The research shows that EWG's suggestion for people to eat more organic produce did not decrease their health risks. Dirty produce? To call more affordable and accessible forms of produce dirty doesn't make any sense, she said. Farmers, Thorne added, are doing everything they can to make sure they're providing safe fruits and vegetables for their families and consumers alike. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, only 1 in 10 U.S. adults eats enough fruit or vegetables. EWG said the calculations for its shopper's guide rely on analysis of more than 40,900 samples taken by the federal government in the last year or 2. That's because not every food is tested every year. Now that we have read the text together, I want you to think about a few questions. What is the article mainly about? What extra information does the title, subheadings, and pictures give you? What was the most important piece of information you read? Does the author take a particular side in this debate? If so, which one? If you have time to go ahead and pause so you can take time to think. Now it's time to have a discussion with your family member, caregiver, or a friend. Remember, the central message is a big idea that the author wants you to understand and take away from reading a text. What do you think the central message of this article is? What details from the text make you think that? What new information did you learn? Go ahead and pause the video here while you discuss these questions. Please take out your lesson number 15 note catcher. Using the lesson 15 note catcher, write down the central idea of the text. Use at least 2 details, evidence from the text, to support your initial response. Whenever you're doing this, we've talked about this before, but remember to really examine the title, the subtitles or subheadings, and thinking about what's in bold and how do they connect. Sometimes you can find, of course, a central message or main idea in these, but other times you have to read the first paragraph or even sometimes the last paragraph and thinking about where is that topic or thesis sentence that's telling you what this article is or concluding what the article was about. Once you kind of figure that out, please write it in your own words. And after writing in your own words, what sentence or sentences from the text will best support your central message? Go ahead and pause the video here while you complete this work. Time to wrap up today's lesson. Let's think about how you did with today's learning targets. I can determine the central idea of an informational text, and I can cite text-based evidence that provides the strongest support for my analysis of a text. As a closing, share your writing with someone and tell them why you chose to draw or write what you did. Also, remember to read a book today for 20 minutes. You can also read with a family member, caregiver, or friend. I also want you to practice your fluency by reading the article from today for 1 minute. You can use a timer or have someone count to 60. After 1 minute, count the words you read and write the number at the top of your text. Later in the week, we'll do this again to see how much you've improved. Thanks for learning again today. You did a great job. Tomorrow for lesson 16, we will dive deeper into the first half of this week's article so we can better understand it. Have a great rest of your day.